Welcome, all of you. We're very pleased and thrilled that you were able to come and be with us today. My name is Barbara Baier. My husband is Stephen Baier, and we're with ALS Worldwide. A little bit of our history. We began ALS Worldwide in 2009. Actually, our introduction to ALS was an MND was in 2002 when our son was diagnosed with ALS at the age of 29. And when he was diagnosed, we really knew very little about the disease and the particulars. At that time, my husband, Stephen, became... You can't hear me?
No.
Is it on? Now is that better? Huh, okay. I'm practically chewing it. Okay. At any rate, our son in 2002, Ben, was diagnosed with ALS. And at that time, we didn't know very much about ALS, but began to learn a great deal. And at the time, Stephen became very involved with forums, researchers, scientists, looking for a resolution for our son, something that was going to help him conquer this disease. Unfortunately, we did lose him in 2008, but along the way, we learned a great deal, and we knew a lot of other patients. We'd met them. We'd visited informally. And in 2008, we formed ALS Worldwide to formalize what we knew and to continue to work on behalf of patients all over the world. So that was our motivation for forming ALS Worldwide. Our personal involvement with ALS, and also becoming very aware of the various scientists, researchers, neurologists throughout the world. Today we're in more than 135 countries, and we see patients everywhere. To tell you a little bit about what our approach is, we know today that there are more than 30 genes involved with ALS. And if there are 30 genes involved, then we know that it can't all be the same disease. That each one of these genes misfolds or is involved in some way. And of the many thousands of patients we've seen, it's very unusual to see two patients that are exactly alike. There'll be differences. Some patients have a difficult time with speech, but they can eat. Or they have a difficult time with eating, but they can speak. Or it's just involved in their hands, or just involved in their legs. And then for some people, it's everywhere. So because there are all of these differences, it's been a very difficult disease to really resolve and to figure out what is going on. Our approach has become to deal with the symptoms, because we feel if you can deal with the symptoms and you can get them resolved to some extent, that you can lengthen life and you can improve the quality of life. So that's our focus. And there are three things that we really want you to pay attention to. One, malnutrition. We don't want you to lose weight. Weight loss is a huge issue for patients with ALS because your muscles are churning up calories faster than they did before. So you have to eat more to maintain your weight. And maintaining your weight is very important. We don't want you to lose weight. So this is through supplements, good supplements, a high-fat, high-protein diet. You can maintain the calories and not suffer from malnutrition. The second area of concern is respiration. Your lungs are fine. There's no problem with your lungs because that's an organ. But your diaphragm is a voluntary muscle. And you know all of the voluntary muscles in your body are affected by ALS. So if it's a voluntary muscle, the chances are good it's going to be affected. But an involuntary muscle or a lung is an organ. So it isn't a problem. But your diaphragm is what pushes against your lungs so that you inhale and exhale. And so that particular that particular muscle is tough to get to because of where it's located. It's not like an arm or a leg. It's inside. And we definitely encourage breathing exercises, yoga, tai chi, the kinds of things that really help your core. The third area of concern is an infection. We don't want you to get an infection because if you get an infection, it can lead to pneumonia. It can lead to an infection in your lungs. So if you wake up in the morning and you have a sore throat or you have an ear infection, you want to get on an antibiotic as soon as possible in order to keep that infection at bay. Those three things are the big items. In addition to that, ALS is a mind, body, spirit disease. It involves everything. In that way, I suppose you could call it a holistic disease because all of those parts really work together. And so it's important to have a good approach to the disease. Meditation is a positive. We talked about yoga. Massage is a good thing. I actually have some books that I brought that we published some years ago. They're still relevant because they contain many different things that you can do to keep yourself strong and doing as best as you can do. You don't die from ALS. You die from the symptoms of ALS. We know many people that have lived many years with this disease. One of the things that we find so challenging is the diagnosis. When you get a diagnosis and it's an absolute number and this is how long you have to live, that's a very depressing message to get. And it's not even really an accurate message because there's nobody who can predict how long you'll live, how well you'll live. It really depends on the individual. Do you have good support at home? Do you have family members that care about you and that you care about? Do you have good friends in your life? You cannot measure the impact of that, but it definitely makes a difference, doesn't it? Yes. So that's sort of an overview of what we talk about. Many times when patients have filled out an online profile, then we get very specific with the individual patient and we talk about what are your symptoms today, and we suggest some medications that you can take to keep those symptoms in control. And if you begin to have other symptoms, that you know that there are medications that can help. You don't necessarily have to have all of these symptoms at once, but rather that you can add to it. And things like if you are having excess saliva, there's atropine sulfate. You don't need it. You don't need it if you have, or Pharmanac. I brought a box of this. This is a very simple disc that you dissolve in water, and it helps to thin out phlegm if you have phlegm that accumulates in your throat. There are things like this. I think I'm going to pass it off to Steve now and have him come up. Although I do want to say one more thing before I sit down. And that is that we did bring copies of our son's film, Indestructible. He was a filmmaker and a writer and an actor before he became ill. And so when he was diagnosed, he decided that he would make a film and put a face on ALS. And he had a great sense of humor. It's an interesting piece. He traveled to many different countries, and I think you'll find it very enjoyable in a way and enlightening. So I encourage you to take a copy. I left a bunch of them up at the desk, up as you leave. Okay.
Hi, I'm Steve Baier. You're able to hear me okay? Great. All of you, welcome. I hope before we all leave today, we can meet every one of you personally. We've met some, but the rest of you don't go away. Barbara's explained what we do, for the most part, and why we do it. But I'm going to re-express a bit of it in my own words. We do it because one of our 5 children developed ALS and died from the disease. And in the course of helping him, we couldn't ignore everyone else that we started to meet. And when people called and said, "Hey, what are you doing for Ben?" we told them, of course. And here we are 17 years later, I guess, or 16 years later, and we're still doing the same thing. We tell people what we are working on, what we found, what the results are, the failures, the successes, and so on. And this can be almost most easily explained for all of you who may have ALS or are caregivers or loved ones of those with ALS, and those terms are all kind of interchangeable, of course. Who couldn't love a friend or a relative with ALS? So everyone here has the same outlook. What can we do? Now, one other thing I want to mention, the majority of what we talk about today is going to be instigated by you. I want you to think about, if necessary, write down any questions, any comments, any ideas you want to discuss further, because we can guess. I mean, we've done this a lot of times before, and we do it every day, but I'd rather not guess. I'd rather have you say, what about this medication? Do you think it's any good? Or is this harmful? Whatever it is you're thinking about, please don't be bashful. And until we get to that, I want to tell you about a few of the things that we have either developed or found or fallen over or whatever in these 17 years that today are beneficial for many people with ALS. But because ALS is such a strange disease or condition, everyone's ALS is different. There's a gentleman here who is unable to walk. He is essentially paralyzed, and yet he still retains speech. There are others with ALS. Is that crackling noise too lousy? Okay. There are others with ALS whose speech is absolutely indecipherable, but they can walk, they can exercise, they can do other things. So one is limb onset, the other is bulbar onset. You've heard these words, you know these words, but there are variations on variations, and everyone needs to be treated in a highly personalized manner. And again, I guess that's what we have spent our last 17 years doing, is treating people in a highly personalized manner. Now, I'm not a physician. I always tell people I'm a high school dropout. That isn't exactly true. I finished high school, but I've learned a lot, and I had the benefit as a child of my father being a pharmacist. So I was there crushing pills or whatever and making them into capsules, and it was really a gross way of doing it compared to today. It's all done by machinery, but I grind up a pill and put it into a capsule, and somebody would actually put that in their mouth and swallow it. But so I have personally always had an interest in medication, in pharmacy, in even in illness. We came from an immigrant family from Eastern Europe or somewhere in Europe, and my mother was one of 14 children. And 12 lived to adulthood, and 11 of them were physicians. So it was a familial kind of thing that erupted when I got there. So enough background. Here's the things that I think can help at least someone with ALS. And some of these can help so much that we've recommended it, and people are using it in the thousands around the world. And I'm going to tell you which the most popular ones are too. So I'll start with that, in fact. Today's big banana, today's great medication that just was approved in the US and is now being used by people around the world, not only through us, but through other agencies. And sometimes it's tough. Sometimes we have to have it shipped from India to Madison, Wisconsin, where we live and office, and then we have to reship it to someone in the UK, who then reships it to a cousin in the Netherlands or in one of the Scandinavian countries, or in other countries all over. We've even had to ship things all the way back from India to the US back to Pakistan. So it gets done, you know, and we have to. But one of the great medications today that we've just started using in the last 2 years is called Diaphragm. Now, have any of you, all of you, heard of this? Okay? Its formal name in Japan is Radicut, and its name in the US formally is Radicava. But it's good old Diaphragm. That's the generic name. And the generic is exactly the same as the branded product, except it costs a fraction of the branded product, and that's the only difference. So, Diaphragm is a wonderful drug that we've been using for over 2 years, or almost 2 years, 19 or 20 months, because it is a systemic drug. Now, everybody know what a systemic drug is? Okay, I'll assume that you don't all. Some medications are for specific symptoms, and that's what we specialize in. Somebody has a bad leg, we make it a better leg. Somebody can't speak, we help them to speak with medications and other treatments. Somebody has excess sialorrhea, that is, saliva drips down from their mouth, and so we dry it up. Now, we use symptomatic relief medications for those individual symptoms. But Radicut or Radicava, or let's just call it Diaphragm, the generic name, that's a special drug because it acts systemically. It helps all over, in the head, the body, the limbs. It just makes people better, or at least prevents the disease from getting any worse. Now, it's not a magic drug. It's not something that boy, you take it and suddenly you're square dancing. Does everybody know what square dancing is? It's an American thing, you know. I'm not sure how to square dance, but I've heard of it for a long time. Anyway, so nobody's out square dancing when they take Radicava or Diaphragm. But what does happen, the wonderful thing is, they don't get worse. And they keep taking this drug every single day. And it's not the world's easiest drug to take. You have to get a PICC line or a portacath. You know, that's an infusion port. And that's a little bit of a pain. Does anybody here have a PICC line or a portacath? Okay. I've had 3 PICC lines, and I lived through it. It's where they stick a needle into right here by your clavicle, or in your arm, or lower arm, or in your stomach, or chest, anywhere where there's some soft tissue, and they go in there and they hook up a little link. I mean, it's a little tiny metal line to one of your veins inside. The ginormous vein, the great big one that goes up and down here, next to your heart. And they do that so you don't have to get stuck with a needle every day for an IV or intravenous injection. So this drug, Diaphragm, is really fantastic. Now, it's not cheap. We've been able to find it, the generic, in India, but it comes out to, by the time we pay all the freight and everything, by the time it gets to the patient, it's almost $2,500 a month. But we're working really hard on getting the cost way down from there. But what does the manufacturer charge in the US by comparison? $1,081 per day. I mean, isn't that wild? Who has that kind of money? I mean, listen, when our son was so ill, I thought about going out and holding up a grocery store or something. I mean, the cost of ALS is just outrageous. So we're working very hard with the manufacturer to get the price down, particularly when it's introduced in countries other than the US. And right now, we and others are able to ship it to this country, we have to do it tactfully, we have to do it carefully. We don't wave a flag and say, here's a drug that's not approved in this country, but we're shipping it anyway. So we do it with a little caution or a little discretion, that's all. And it works. But edaravone is a terribly important drug, and please go to our website. Those of you who have phones in your hands, type in the name Edaravone, edaravone. Just raise a hand. Is there someone here who has not heard of it before? Everyone. As usual, you are the country of literacy and knowledge and awareness, and I really mean that. So edaravone, we really can't recommend it enough. And there are people in this room who are using edaravone right now. A second drug that we use so often, I mean, it's almost wild. We've used it for, I think, maybe 12,000 patients around the world. And it's the simplest, least expensive drug imaginable. It's called Nuedexta. Have any of you heard of Nuedexta? Okay. Now, Nuedexta is also called, its generic name, which is dextromethorphan and quinidine. You understand why they gave it a name. Now, this drug, I believe it's not allowed or it's not prescribed in Norway. Is that correct? Or it is now?
For BBA.
Oh, so you are able to get it for PBA.
Yeah.
But here's the wonderful thing about this drug, Nuedexta. It helps for all symptoms from about here up. So what that means, it helps with upper respiratory capacity. It helps with speech, chewing, swallowing, facial muscle control. You know what happens so often with ALS? The facial muscles get frozen, and a person is really not able to express themselves facially any longer, so they always look one way. And this relieves it. Plus, it also relieves that condition that Roar just mentioned, PBA, or pseudobulbar affect. And that's the unconscionable crying and laughter that goes on without really a strong stimulus. Someone hears a joke and they start crying. Someone hears that a beloved aunt has died and they laugh. Or they just laugh and cry disproportionately to the influence. It can be in the right direction, but too much, and it's just not controllable. So Nuedexta is a drug that we believe in so much that we have probably prescribed it, recommended it. When I say prescribe it, by the way, we have a staff physician, we've always had one, and he writes the prescriptions, and they go to pharmacies all over the world when they're accepted in other countries, or otherwise they go to pharmacies in the US who ship them out, or we urge you to get them locally. Save the air freight. So just get it where you can. But if you can't get it locally, then we can help you find where to get it. And Nuedexta is just terribly important. It has a benefit ratio that is, how many people does it help out of every 100 that use it? Probably about 90. So it's wildly endorsed and accepted and used well. Third drug. Have you ever heard of methylcobalamin? Anyone? It's also called methyl B12. Has anyone in this room, for any reason, ever been given a B12 injection or taken it orally? There's one. There's the second. However many there are. B12 is a very simple drug. It's really a vitamin or a, hello? Yes, or a supplement. And it only becomes a medication when it's injected and it's used in very, very high dosage. But here's why we recommend it so often. I mean, probably 80–85% of the patients with whom we work in 135 or so countries are taking methyl B12. And it's only for one basic reason. It makes limbs stronger and more efficient. There's a second reason. And it makes people feel better overall. Their limbs are easier to use. It gives people more energy, and it really works in the limbs more than anywhere else. Now, it does require a daily injection, and one day you take it under this arm, and the next day under the other arm, and the next day behind the thigh, and the next day behind the other thigh. And you do this so that all limbs get the benefit of this real boost of energy. There is one downside, but nobody's ever suffered from it. It makes urine turn slightly pink or red. It's kind of interesting, but it's because the medication is this very deep purple color, and it's excreted through the kidneys. So you look in the bowl and you say, oh, look at that. So that's the only downside to the medication. And it's not terribly expensive either. And all of these things that I'm talking about, you'll find them on our website. If I were really capable of doing things like this, I would be able to point to the website flashing across there and so on, but I don't know how. Oh. Okay. Aurora says it's in the sleep mode. Well, there's one page of the website. I can think that's the front page or part of it. So, that's methylcobalamin. It costs us, and therefore the patients, about $200 US per month. And you have an injection of it almost every day. We've been increasing the dosage because we find that the shorter time frame between an injection of methylcobalamin that is doing it daily is much better than doing it every other day, because it doesn't last very long. But while it lasts, people are able to walk a little better. They're able to use their arms a little better. They feel greater energy. They're ready to go outside as opposed to staying in bed. And those are all terribly important things about dealing with this rotten disease. Another drug we use a lot of, I've told you about Diaphragm, I've told you about Dexa, I've told you about methylcobalamin, glutathione. It's anybody know what glutathione is? It's sometimes called glutathione. It depends on which syllable you put the emphasis. That's an old joke. Well, glutathione is also an energy boosting drug. Now, this isn't something like one of the bad drugs where, you get a high from it or anything. You have to inject glutathione in a vein. So you can get what's called a little sandwich board so that your spouse or friend or nurse or whomever or child or parent can help you inject it. And you inject it with a little sandwich board. It's a little piece of wood covered by cardboard. And you place it on your hand, let's say, or on your arm, and the needle will go into the vein much easier, much more directly, and it just stays there while you have a slow drip of this drug that I was just speaking of called glutathione. And once again, it helps tremendously in a burst of energy so that somebody is able to walk when maybe they had to walk with just a cane the day before. Now, it doesn't last forever. You do it 3 times a week, and you get benefit 3 times a week. And 3 times a week is usually enough to keep your limbs energized consistently. Now, it's not magic. None of these will work with everyone, but all of these should be tried, not all at once, but 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. And you may be in the lucky 50 or 60 or 70%, or the unlucky 30 or 40 or 50%. Depends on God, nature, and you, and I don't know what else. So glutathione is, again, a wonderful drug for the purpose of bringing limb energy and overall energy and a greater level of happiness, of course. So, Barbara started to mention Farmanac, this stuff right here. This is really an incredible drug. For those of you here who have ALS, or who are caregivers or loved ones of those with ALS, how many of the patients here or with whom you're involved have a problem with excess saliva, what is technically called sialuria? Is that a common occurrence? Yes? No? Maybe? Not at all. So no one has problems of excessive saliva. Then I won't tell you any more about Firmenich. Okay, Riluzole. You know of this drug, also called Rilotech. Is there anyone who doesn't know about Riluzole? Okay, you all do. Or you don't understand my English. Okay, you do. All right. Rilotech. It's not a great drug for the purpose for which it was originally intended. Rilotech is just a slightly okay drug on its own because it theoretically extends life by 3 to 4 months. But you know something? It's almost impossible to prove that. I mean, if someone is gone, can anyone really say, the neurologist, the family member, the patient, him or herself, on their deathbed, can anyone say, Riluzole helped me live 3 to 4 months, I would have been gone in April instead of September? No one can say that. I mean, there's no way to figure it out. But the assumption was made to get it marketed. But here's its real benefit. And now that it's generic, that is very inexpensive, it's absolutely worth using. But not to extend life, to make other drugs more viable, more effective. Almost every one of these drugs that I've mentioned already is boosted by Riluzole. So it's an activator, and that's the reason to take it. And if you're not taking these other drugs, or any of them, it may not be worth taking at all. Doesn't hurt, but it won't help. The next drug. Have you ever heard of quinine? You know what quinine is? Where have you been? Who doesn't know of quinine? Quinine is one of the things that I mixed in my father's drugstore when I was 7 years old.
There's
Should I just yell? Is that okay?
yeah.
Can you hear me back there?
Not so much.
I'll yell louder. So what's quinine? It's called quinine sulfate, and it's one of the oldest drugs in the world that is still in use. It's been in use for about 800 years. It was found by the Mayan Indians in Peru. And when Charles Pfizer, the one who started Pfizer Drug Company, you've heard of them, when he started the company, he went to Peru and he visited with the Indian tribes and found quinine and other things like that. Just turn it off?
There.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I know you love the noise, but... So anyway, quinine is this incredible drug. It has benefits all over the place. But the biggest benefit for those of you with ALS or your loved ones with ALS is that it stops that rampant, the rigors, the stiffness, the rigidity that happens usually or mostly in the legs and mostly at night. Has anyone ever experienced or seen someone with ALS experience where they wake up in the night and they can be crying from the pain because there's that terrible rigidity and they can't walk around usually to get rid of it, so they take an aspirin, which doesn't work. Does anyone know how to get rid of that feeling? Have any of you experienced that or seen this happen with the rigidity in one's legs and sometimes the arms? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll assume that you all know what that is. So you take quinine sulfate. It costs about 50 cents US for such a capsule, and you take it before bedtime, and you sleep through the night soundly. Surely some of you or your loved ones are unable to sleep soundly all night. And usually it's because of the rigidity, and usually that is where it happens, is in the legs. So you take a 50-cent US pill, and you can get it here. You just have to have a prescription for it here, and that's where the neurologist comes in. And is there anyone who doesn't understand why I invoke the neurologist as being a pain in the neck? I mean, you don't even have to agree, but do you understand why I say that? Because they're a pain in the neck all over the world. I mean, if you think it's just Norway, absolutely not. They specialize in pain in the neck in the US more than anywhere else. Makes the ones in Norway look like gods. But it also happens in Pakistan, India. I don't think there are neurologists in Borneo, but if there were, they'd be the same way. Now, it's not because they're bad people. It's because they just don't get it. They don't understand that with a disease, a condition, and I'm not sure which it is, by the way, a disease or a condition. I mean, it's been argued or discussed for 150 years. So let's just call it either one. Let's call it a disease. It's a disease that is unique in every person. And you have to treat every person sometimes quite differently than every other person. And it's a disease where you treat symptoms, because there are very few, if any, even today, systemic treatments. Edaravone may be one of the first truly efficient systemic treatments, but all of the others are to deal with individual symptoms: stiffness, rigidity, inappropriate laughter and crying. Their tongue swells up, they get welts on their tongue, they're unable to eat. Even that is a symptom of ALS, and there are treatments for that, of course. Sometimes it goes into a feeding tube. That's a treatment. And there are other such things, other such interjections or treatments. But some of them can be medication for all of the symptoms of ALS. And if you don't approach it that way, you know something? Then your loved one isn't going to be getting what he or she should get. Because with the possible exception of edaravone, and we probably won't know for another 2, 3, 4 years, right now we're assuming that it has systemic benefit. We think we see that, and I don't mean we, me and Barbara, I mean the royal we, everyone who treats patients with ALS. At least we feel it, or we hope for it, or will accept it. You know, the most negative ones say, well, maybe it will happen, but I doubt it. We say, we hope it happens, and we're going to provide it more and more and more so that people can determine if it actually does help to reverse the disease, which is a curative capacity. In any language, does this make sense so far? Okay. I mean, none of you think I'm talking about plant life or dog shows. Okay. So quinine sulfate for rigidity and spasticity. For 50 cents from a Hopewell that'll ship it to you, from a pharmacy called Hopewell, that it's not a spiritual thing. They're in a town called Hopewell, New Jersey. They have no greater powers, I think. But for 50 cents a piece, they'll ship it out to you. They'll charge your credit card. And you can probably get it here. It may be easier to get it from Hopewell. They've been doing it for 15 years. Did I mention atropine sulfate? Atropine sulfate is it's a plant-based medication. And atropine is poisonous. If you went out and you clipped a bag full of atropine leaves and you chewed them up, you would die. But in a very, very tiny, not tiny, but a smallish dosage, they make it into a powder. The powder goes into a capsule, and it helps tremendously for relieving excess saliva. It dries you up. It dries up the patients. And I asked earlier if that bothered anyone, and I didn't see anyone raise a hand, but it probably bothers about 50% of all ALS patients. There's drool or dribble. They're constantly going like that. And so for something like that, I mean, maybe you recognize it as and having to spit it out. So you do a few things. You keep a supply of Kleenex there all the time to wipe it away. You give them Pharmanac to get it out, and then you give them atropine sulfate to get rid of it altogether. And it makes the difference in a life without stress and a life with stress. So, who knows of the drug called mexillatine? No. Okay. I didn't either until a few years ago, so it's no big deal. But the day we found mexillatine was like a giant theoretical rainbow going across the sky. Do you all know what fasciculations are? They're the little tremors that go on body-wide, frequently in the limbs, but for many patients with ALS, it goes on in the torso, it can go on in the face, the mouth, the lips. I've seen ears fasciculation, etc. And if it was just a nasty thing, you'd say, okay, I'll live with it. But it's more than a nasty thing. About 5 or 6, or maybe now it's 7, even about 7 years ago, a really bright doctor at Harvard got an idea, and he set out to prove his idea, and he did. That fasciculations are not just a symptom of ALS, they're a cause of ALS. In other words, the tremors, and you know what I mean by fasciculations, it's like little worms under the skin, and people get them so often at night, also during the daytime, in the legs, the arms, the hands, the belly, the torso, everywhere. Oh, I don't know who I am now. So they get these fasciculations, and that's a symptom of the disease. But at the same time, those fasciculations are aggravating the motor neurons in the brain that are actually the cause of ALS. I mean, there's a lot of things in the cascade of events that cause ALS. But in that cascade, and really very near the top, are motor neurons that are dying before their time. That's why ALS is actually considered a form of premature aging. Because, look, I'm 75. X number of my motor neurons are gone. Because I'm 75. When I was 45, didn't have as many gone. And if God wills, and I don't eat too much and whatever, 10 years from now, I may still be alive. But I'll have fewer motor neurons. And that happens to all of us, to everyone. But with ALS, because those motor neurons are diseased in a very special, nasty, and different way, they have a disproportionate number or percentage of motor neurons that are dying for no particular reason. So if you have, or your loved one has fasciculations, the tremors, they are exaggerating motor neuron death. They're causing more motor neurons to die. So what do you do with it? Among other things, you take a drug called, which drug was that?
You were talking about mexillatine.
Yes, mexillatine. And it's a prescription drug. I don't know if you can get it in Norway or not. From what I hear about what you can't get, I would kind of doubt it. So what you do is you get it at a wholesale price from a pharmacy in a country that does manufacture it or allow it. And all I know is India and the US. I don't know of any other countries where it's obtainable. Probably it's obtainable in Japan. Now, we are not drug pushers. We don't, do I look like I mean, I hope I don't look like a drug dealer, and we're not. But simply as a service to patients around the world, because we know from our own personal experience what it's like when you walk up to a neurologist and say, I've heard great things about this drug, may I have a prescription for it? And depending on the country, depending on the personality, he or she says something like, well, I'm sorry, that's not allowable in Norway, in Egypt, in Timbuktu, in wherever they are. Or they say, well, I could write the prescription, but it's basically a medication for a different disease. And I don't believe in cross-prescribing drugs. I don't want to take an MS drug and give it to you because you don't have MS, you have ALS. Well, I have to ask you all a question. Why the hell not? I mean, anyone here, why the hell not? For a person with ALS, because it's a drug that was originally intended for MS? Is that a valid reason for denying that drug? No, they don't all feel that way, but a lot of them still do. I mean, we've been working on a lot of them, particularly in the US, I mean neurologists, for 15, 16 years now. The first year we didn't work on anyone. They said, who the hell are you? But after that, we'd go to them and we'd say, why not this drug? Because here, look at this. In Germany, they did a clinical trial of it, and they show some really profound impact for those with ALS. And the doc would look at it and say, well, you see, this is a drug for MS, and MS is a completely different disease than ALS. I said, yeah, but they say it works for ALS. Well, that's, maybe yes, maybe no. It's theoretical. It's not proven. They did a small test. It has to pass the gold standard of testing. You know what the gold standard of testing is? It's waiting for your loved one to die and waiting during that time for so many tests to be done to finally determine that yes or no, it's okay. And the answer is usually no. The answer is not usually yes. How many drugs have you seen approved in Norway for ALS? I'm eyeballing you. How many? Right, Riluzole? What the hell? I mean, one drug? This is the year 2017. ALS was identified in 1853 and then 1859, England and France respectively, and it's been around probably as long as mankind has been around, or personkind. We're in 2017, Steve. We don't talk about mankind. Personkind has been around. So that's what you're faced with. Do you want that to be the situation? Do you like it when the neurologist looks you square in the eye and says, I'm sorry, but I can't prescribe that. It's not within my ethical standards. Do you care, and I'm bullying you again, do you care about that neurologist's ethical standards when whatever that is, it stands in the way of your loved one getting a drug that might help for even just for symptomatic relief? Is that message from him okay enough?
She's always with me to the hospital, so she knows.
Well, a couple of things that I wanted to interject, and one of them is, that's how Diaphragm became available, because it was originally for stroke victims. And so in Japan, they went and tested it on ALS patients, and that's really how it became available and was proven. But one of the things I wanted to suggest is that you can sometimes have your regular physician is more inclined to cross-prescribe something that's going to help your symptoms than will your neurologist. And so I encourage you to go to your regular physician, who is often much more open to these kinds of changes.
Very, very important, critical point, which I was just getting to. Yeah, now I know who I am. That's a really critical point. I am so thrilled that Barbara brought it up. We have found that general practitioners or primary care physicians are infinitely more understanding, sympathetic, empathetic, all of those words, meaning you say, my loved one needs a prescription for this. And you might even have a little document that shows about the clinical study of it for ALS, or that it hasn't been proven, but it's shown to be efficacious, which means beneficial. And a GP, a general practitioner, will frequently say, hey, if it's going to give him some relief, damn right. And he writes the prescription for it. You go to a neurologist in the same building, and he says, oh, I'm sorry, we haven't done clinical trials on that in Norway yet. Who cares? Now, we are not cultists. I mean, we are not people who believe in starting fires to attract attention. I mean, we're a couple of squares. But we do believe that you have to do for yourselves and your loved ones what others are not prone toward doing. You have to have an activist attitude. And we've had that attitude for 17 years. I remember one of the 4 neurologists, and this was one at Mayo Clinic. You've all heard of Mayo Clinic. I mean, that's like the big banana of US medical institutions. I mean, Mayo Clinic, you see the waves rising above the name. And I stood there and I said to the doctor, listen, I've heard about such and such. It was an antibiotic called minocycline. Goes back 17 years, so I haven't lost it all. And I said, what about minocycline? I've read some very good things about it, relieving symptoms of ALS. And he said, oh, well, that's an antibiotic. I mean, if Ben, our son, has an infection for which minocycline is effective, I suppose one of my colleagues, I can't because I'm a neurologist, but one of my colleagues would be willing to write a prescription for minocycline. And I said, hey, will minocycline hurt him if he takes an antibiotic and doesn't really need it? And he said, well, theoretically, if he takes too many antibiotics over too many years, he'll be immune to their benefit. I said, you think I'm going to worry about that when you've just told us that he has ALS? I mean, does this sound familiar to anyone?
Yes.
I mean, so you're not saying, what the hell is he talking about? Well, it goes on worldwide. I mean, we've been with doctors, with neurologists in India who say that the medication that is manufactured at a plant about 2 blocks away from that doctor's office, he's not going to prescribe it because even in India, he has the same silly notions. Okay, that's all I have to say. What do you want to ask? What do you want to say? Do you have anything? You want to know what I think of the weather in Norway? Beautiful. Want to know what I thought about being, where were we?
Christensen.
Christensen. Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Clean, perfect. People are nice. Nobody swears. Okay. But you didn't ask those things. What do you want to ask? Anything? You, the one
Or
I keep
comment.
eyeballing.
Just if you have a comment or a concern or, we're here.
What
So it's an
medications
opportunity.
other than those that I have mentioned are your loved ones on, or are you on?
Yeah.
Yes. How about you?
Me first, my name is Ragnhild Jørsoen. My mother has the ALS. And I have a question about the L-serine. There's been focus in Norway about that medication, and you didn't mention it.
Right. I didn't mention it because I don't know yet. I don't think anyone knows yet. There's been a lot of patient talk about it. And that should be the best source of all. When a patient says, hey, I feel better from it. But there's not a big logic to the drug. And secondly, there haven't been very many people who swear by it. And thirdly, the swearing hasn't really been monitored. It's not backed up by a strong set of evaluations. So L-serine, like a number of other drugs, here, what would I do? If my kid was still alive, I'd give him L-serine. I'd try it in a cautious manner. I wouldn't go to the top banana dose. I would go to a medium dose. I would probably try to keep him off of other drugs that are also of an experimental nature at the same time, because sometimes you can take two experimental drugs and they interact negatively, and no one knows that in advance. I mean, we have a chief scientific officer. Boy, he knows more about the compounding of drugs and what they mean with each other and which one will impact the other and so on and so forth. And will two of them together cause a heart attack and so on and so forth. And I turn to him, we turn to him every single day to say, what about this and what about that? What about this combination and so on? And a lot of times he doesn't know. And he's the best and the brightest. I don't even know why he works for us.
Well, the other piece is that if you try too many things simultaneously and something's working, but you don't know what it is, so then you're going to have to continue to take all of them. It's better to, stagger it and try something and then see, is this working or not, before you move on to something else.
And whereas I would have liked to answer the first question with a giant and relevant and great answer, I can't, because we just don't have enough experience. And I would rather tell you that than give you fairy tales. Okay?
But you had a question too.
Yeah, my name is Kristin Hen, and my husband again is ALS. And I was wondering if you know anything about
Masitinib?
Yeah.
Okay. If you had asked me 6 months ago, I would have said, that's a very promising drug. Maybe as promising as Diaphragm. That would be 6 months ago. But then, the very scientist who I just mentioned, Dr. James Bennett, our chief scientific officer, he and I had a 2 3/4 hour conversation with the head of investigational science at AB Pharma in Paris. Also with their CSO, their chief scientific officer, and a number of other scientists there, and and 1 or 2 management people there. And it was for them to convince us, little ALS Worldwide, or not that little, but to convince us that Masitinib was a drug that we should recommend to people for usage as soon as it's available. And we intended to do that. I mean, we were eager for it to succeed, and we thought there were reasons why it could succeed, because we had seen their test results, their trial results, and it was kind of interesting. But as we got into the conversation, here, I'll get to the punchline. In response to our probing questions, the answer from their chief scientific officer 26 times in this 2 3/4 hour conversation was, I choose not to discuss that at this time. It wasn't go scratch. It wasn't I don't know. It wasn't maybe. It was I choose not to discuss that matter at this particular time. Now that wasn't the only thing that bothered us. The other thing is they have been accused by the US FDA, and stodgy and in some ways old-fashioned as FDA is, they're really not bad people, and they're very bright people. We've worked very closely with FDA to get experimental drugs into the hands of patients many, many times over many years. So we think they're good guys. But the point is, FDA will not allow them to proceed any further in the US, either dispensing the drug or even giving it under compassionate use. I mean, we had Diaphragm over 2 years, quite a little under 2 years ago, as a compassionate use drug. In other words, we filled out all the paperwork and we said, look, this person has ALS and here's the medical file, and our CSO signs off on it, and we have a CRO, a contract research organization that monitors everything we do and blah, blah, blah. We gave them all the particulars, and they said, okay, you can try it on 3 people. They won't even allow this company, AB Pharma, to try it with a CRO, a contract research organization, and as a compassionate use trial with a single patient in the United States. Because the talk all over the world is that AB Pharma does not honestly state their results, that they lie. Now, it's a big enough flag. I don't know. I mean, maybe they're the most trustworthy people in the world. But right now, we don't think so. And Dr. Bennett, who is really our guru, I mean, we have learned more from Jim Bennett than any other human being about ALS over a 16 or so year period. And if he feels that way, then I have to have something pretty solid to disagree with that, and I don't. I agree with him totally. I'm sorry to give you that answer, but personally, we would not write a prescription, we would not provide the drug. We can get it, and it's available in Central Europe. It is basically the same drug as they are giving to dogs, and it's called Massivet. Now, it has to be dosaged totally differently, but it's the same medication. And just on principle, however, I would not give a veterinary medication to any human being. But others are doing so. Next question. Don't be bashful. Yes, ma'am.
B12 injections, I'm just wondering if the ones that you talk about and that you maybe provide, if it's different from the ones that I would get in Norway, if you have a stronger...
Well, probably it's different. And Roar, you can tell our friends here whether or not the dosage and format of the drug we provide to you is available in Norway.
And not likely.
Not what?
Not likely.
Oh, that would have been my answer too, but why not ask the local? We use a form of methyl B12. It's pure methylcobalamin, which is the most recent isomer of B12. I mean, it's the best, it's the most effective, it's the strongest, etc. Now, we use it at a dosage level of 25,000.
25 ml.
Oh, 25 milliliters, and that contains how much pure chemical?
I don't know.
You'll find it on our website. The complete, believe me, at my age, I do not remember every dosage, every specification any longer. That ended about 3
But
months ago.
we do have it on our website, and we're in the process of creating podcasts and prescription information so that you could print it out, take it to your doctor, say, this is what I want you to write the prescription and give it to me, and I'm going to take it to a compounding pharmacy. It's a little bit tricky because you can get like 5 mcgs, which is a very baby dose, and that I've seen that available at different pharmacies, but it's not going to do it for you because it's the 25 ml that's just a really huge dose. It gives you that burst of energy, and the others are, they're just not going to do the trick. So that's why we
It
recommend
has to be a
that.
very high dosage and used every day because it leaves your system so quickly.
Right.
Remember the purple urine thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about something that is so hard to pronounce. You talked about it, glutathione.
Oh,
glutathione.
glutathione.
Yes.
Glutathione. Now, glutathione.
I ordered it
Yes.
recently from bulk supplements
Sure.
and in a powder, as a powder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did
It's
you
not
do
that-
with the
No.
powder?
I haven't gotten it yet.
Oh.
Just ordered it.
That's another one. The powder, I mean, people take glutathione and they take it as a pill. but that's not going to give you what you need in terms of, working against the symptoms. You need the infusion that goes into it's an intravenous infusion, and that's what gives you the energy.
And how do I order it? Do I get it?
That could be available more likely in Europe. I do think that it's a more well-known product, and you probably can find it here in Norway. But if you can't, we can definitely provide a prescription and have it sent from New Jersey, from Hopewell. And I think we wouldn't have a problem going through customs in Norway with glutathione, would we? I don't know.
Do we go to say?
They don't say.
We've heard probably
Yeah.
that some things do come into Norway without any difficulty whatsoever. It depends on whether or not they already use glutathione or glutathione for any other condition, in different dosage, etc. They don't really care what the dosage is, they care about the chemical itself. That would be a very easy thing for us or you even to find out. And you would have to call the pharmaceutical agency that governs that type of thing. Just say, glutathione, is it legal in Norway? Or call a pharmacy, that's even easier. And they'll say, yeah, sure. Now, they may not be able to provide it in the high dosage or in the format, as a liquid, as an injectable liquid with absolute clarity and integrity as a liquid that you can inject an IV. The worst comes to worst, it can be shipped from the U.S. It does. Every shipment from the U.S. to here adds on a certain amount for freight. If it's just like a single medication, it adds on about $50 or so. If it's a bunch of medications, it can add on $150. But if you are using 6 or 8 different medications from a place like Hopewell or any other compounding pharmacy in the U.S., $150 spread over 6 medications is not that much if they're important and if they're helping you.
And the thing is, if you have the prescription in hand and you find a capable and competent compounding pharmacy here in Oslo, that would be fabulous. And I definitely encourage people in different countries, find the right compounding pharmacy who can work with you, and not only will you help yourself, you'll help all these other people that are also in your country. So I encourage you to do
I am
that.
so glad Barbara just said what she did. You know what is so incredibly important? Outreaching to others, to other patient families. Do you all do that?
Good.
I
That's
hope
good.
that means all of you.
It's really important.
I'll give you an example. Usually, we don't put patients in contact with one another. We don't write an email and say, Joe, meet Charlie, or Norwegian names. We don't do it because we observe the standards of privacy and all those other things that go into, if I want to meet somebody, I'll introduce myself. But on the rare occasion we do it, it has brought so much joy and benefit to those who are in communication with each other. We introduced Roar to, I think, 3 other patients, a couple in Denmark, another in Sweden. And not only are they pen pals and do they talk together, but they share ideas together, they share experiences together. If all 4 of them or 3 of them are on one medication that we've recommended, and if all 3 of them were to say, gee, this hasn't helped any of us a bit, we're going to sit up and look smart. We're going to try and figure out what's going on. Maybe the drug isn't what we feel it is, or maybe there's something about the Norwegian physiognomy, the body, that causes it not to do as well as in certain other areas of the world. These things can happen, so you can do yourselves great favors, or your loved ones. Talk with one another. Say, hey, are you using that? When Steve and Barbara talked about glutathione, I went ahead and I called, I got a prescription from them, and Hopewell Pharmacy shipped it out, and boy, my husband, my brother, my father, my mother, whomever, is just doing so much better on it. He or she has so much more energy, is able to lift her feet a little better, etc. Or a different answer.
The other thing is that if you find a pharmacy here and you tell us about it, then we can put it in Facebook, and then it would be, the information would get out there for other people here in Norway. I mean, it is really a communication device between Facebook and our website and you. So I think that that can help to get the information out. And you had a question, right?
Yeah, more questions. So what about what you know about new medications that are not approved yet? I see on your list you're mentioning Neuron. I read this in phase 3 now in the United States.
It's a stem cell therapy.
Yes. What can you say about that? Can we have the result or the approval from CDA?
It's a procedure, a stem cell procedure.
You have to talk louder.
Oh.
I don't think people can hear.
Neuron is the name of a stem cell therapy that has been in development for 20 years. Some people, including the original inventors, 2 Israeli scientists, who we happen to know quite well, they feel it is not as relevant as when it was first invented, and that there are other opportunities that may be better at this time. But on the other hand, they have gotten FDA to approve a phase 3 trial for ALS, which is further along than anybody else ever has gotten, okay, for stem cell therapy for ALS. There are fraudulent stem cell therapies all over the world for ALS. They're nonsense. And I will tell you the truth. I took our son to Beijing about 15 or so years ago for stem cell therapy, where he and I were convinced it was a gift from God. It was absolutely useless. I mean, $15,000 later, which was the small part, but lost hope, some decline in his abilities, probably directly due to that therapy. I mean, those were the real costs of it. So, and that's still going on. I would say that probably somewhere around 99% of stem cell therapies, not for other conditions, but for ALS, that are promised to be effective, it's a lie. I wish I could say otherwise. Now, there's a brilliant guy in Los Angeles. His name is Clive Spencer, so you gotta like him.
Norwegian name.
Yes. Clive is a brilliant scientist at Cedars-Sinai Hospital out there. And he received a dozens of millions of dollar grant to perfect stem cell therapy. If anyone is going to do it with the science that's available today, it'll be Clive. Barbara and I happened to be in his office about 3 years ago when his phone rang, and he looked at the caller ID. He said, "I hate to interrupt, I have to take this call." He picked up the phone and said, "Yes?" And he said, "Oh, how nice. Well, thank you so much." And he hung up the phone, and then he went crazy. It was the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine granting him the $17 million. Eventually, they went up to about $30 million that gave him the funds to go into this brilliant trial. Now, this stem cell trial aggregates together stem cells and gene therapy. Okay, so it's both all at once. It activates certain genes in the body and simultaneously replaces deficient stem cells or not enough stem cells. If anything succeeds, I think it will be that. But right now, you will probably wouldn't be able to get into the clinical trial from Neuron, phase 3, because it's limited to US patients. They have to live within a certain distance of Mass General Hospital or the other hospitals where it's being tested, and so on. And it's like finding truly the tiniest needle ever in the largest haystack ever. So I don't even suggest working at it. They'll say no. They've said no to dozens of thousands already.
There was another trial also, actually not a trial, but a company, Neural
Neuralstem.
And they went through many different segments of research. And after, 10, 12 years, they gave it up. I mean, it wasn't working and it failed. If you're interested in seeing a piece of surgery for stem cells, my son actually had his surgery filmed. I don't know if you have the stomach for it, but it will definitely give you a little bit of insight into what kind of things go into having stem cells, that kind of stem cell
Because
surgery.
here's the deal, for it to be really effective, it has to go to the spinal column. I mean, that's where the stem cells are deficient for ALS, in the brain and the spinal column. The brain is actually kind of easy to go into with stem cells. We have been in the OR, the operating room, for several stem cell surgeries. I had to stand behind the blue line and wear all the blue clothing and everything. And going into the brain is not that complex. Going to the spinal cord, oh my gosh, it's incredibly complex. So if somebody sends you something from the internet that says they're doing it in Peru, or there's a great guy in Bogota, Colombia, don't even read further, honestly. You have to be in Mayo Clinic or Massachusetts General Hospital or the equivalent hospitals, and there are many throughout Europe. You can't be in an Asian hospital. I was when Ben was operated on, and I was standing here, and I took a look. There was about that much water on the floor, and I said, "Oh my God!" So I stepped up to a higher level. The cleaning lady came around with a big mop, and she mopped it all up, and I said, "Well, I don't know what that was from, but it's safe to stand down there." I walked back down there. About 30 minutes later, there was that much water again. I mean, it was probably 20 feet away, a wall in between, but 20 feet away from where our son's spinal cord had been opened up for stem cells to go in. Okay, so you just have to use you have to use your head, and if it's someplace in India even, I mean, we have medication that's made in India. That's a totally different thing. It's like a sanctuary of a factory in between everything that goes on in the streets of Mumbai. But a stem cell clinic, that's part of the streets of Mumbai. Okay? You were asking that question? You were?
I have
Yes.
a question, because even if you get these drugs like
Diaphragm, yes.
The healthcare system in Norway is so strict. So to get somebody to put in a PIC line or a VAP would be almost impossible, because you have to have a hospital behind you, or somebody is standing off the risk of losing their...
Someone has to be responsible for the treatment.
If they do it without the standing risk of losing their license to
Yeah.
the profession.
Yeah.
So even if you are able to get these drugs on the private market, it's so difficult to get to administrate them. Even just to get an IV, to do that in a home in Norway, you would be probably, somebody had to take a risk.
You want to show them your PIC line?
No.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Jeg har fått hos fastlegen sånn hva heter det? Flon.
Har du den i armen?
Nei, det var tydelig å begynne med. Da tok jeg vonde via med den flon. Da har jeg fått laget inn VAP. Det fick jag gjort på ett lokalt sykehus.
Og det ville de. Det
Ja.
sa de var greit.
Men
Ja,
er
ja.
det noen da som du på en måte kjenner? For jeg tenker å få noen til å legge inn en vapp, det skal
Nei,
til.
jeg kjente de ikke.
Og de
Men,
visste hvorfor du skulle ha den også.
Ja, jeg presenterte papiret på et bonde. Så hvorfor at jeg fikk tak i det fra USA. Og anestesilegen sa ok, jeg hjelper deg. Så det gikk greit.
Da skal man finne en sånn lege, og
Ja.
da er det ikke mange av.
Ja.
We have about 5 patients in Scandinavia, the various countries, who have obtained PICC lines and or portacaths, and who are successfully using a Diaphragm. That speaks to the fact that it can be done, of course, and it depends on you. When I say it depends on you, are you eager enough to arrange for it? And if so, can you pick up the phone? Will you pick up the phone and start with your GP, your primary care physician, and say, listen, I mean, do you know him or her well?
Nei?
Yeah. Okay, and it's for someone else, not for you?
Yes, for someone.
Great. Still, call up your physician and say, there is a drug approved by the FDA that is being successfully used, to the best of my knowledge, your knowledge, around the world. It's called Radicate or Radicata or Diaphragm. That's the generic name. And we're able to get it through an ALS foundation, or we're traveling to Japan and we're going to find the doctor there who makes it available to patients. He has an office about this big. Well, we can give you the address. And you just say, I'm going to get it, and I want my friend, my sister, my brother, whomever it is, my parent, to have a PICC line in order to get it in. Or I have so much confidence in the drug that rather than a PICC line, which is somewhat temporary, about 6 months, I want to have a portacath. And you call portacath something else.
VAP.
VAP. VAP?
Våp.
Venekort.
VAP? VAP? Okay. If I mispronounce it, my apologies. So, you call him and you tell him that. And he says, oh, I can't assist you. Personally, you know what I'd say. I'd say, I'm going to get a new GP. But you make that call to 3 or 4 general practitioners that you know, or a friend knows, or a relative knows, and by the 3rd time, you're going to have somebody who says, sure, I'll write the prescription. I suggest you have it done at this hospital, and I'm going to tell them it's for glutathione. Because, see, that's allowable. And glutathione has to be injected, for ALS at least, through a portacath or a PICC line. So he writes the prescription for that. He doesn't put a Diaphragm on there. I mean, listen, you have to be able to zig and zag a little bit. I mean, this is a disease for which 150 years no one zigged and no one zagged. And that's why the lifespan is considered to be 1 to 2 years. And you heard of people dying after 45 days. Even 15, 16 years ago, we know a man who died 31 days after his diagnosis. And he was diagnosed pretty quickly. And he was a strong, tough guy. I mean, he was a runner, he was a boxer, and so on and so forth. I mean, but that stuff shouldn't happen any longer. You take preventive measures, you do what you have to do, you zig and zag, you find the right doctor who understands your concept of dealing with ALS, and you get him to work on your behalf.
You know, just like there are a lot of diseases for which there isn't a cure. And I always think of really, people have diabetes. They don't have a cure, but they have a treatment. They have things you can do. And this is a disease for which there are treatments that you can use and that can keep it at bay and control it. There's things that you can do personally that are going to help as well. 10 years ago, they said, oh, don't exercise, you'll wear out your muscles. And today we know that's absolutely nonsense. You need to exercise, but you need to exercise all of your muscles. It's not just the arms and legs. We think about that when we go to the health clubs, that we're going to work on our, strengthening our core. But there's also these muscles in your throat and in your voice and in your speech, and those are muscles that also need to be exercised. And we don't think about it. Your hands. Hands tend to have, people, when it affects the limbs, the hands become involved and you can't use your hands. Well, we don't really exercise our hands very much. I mean, maybe if you're a boxer, you do that. But otherwise, we don't exercise them. And they're up at the table, you'll see that we have these squishy balls. And I want you to be exercising your hands, strengthening your hands, so that you retain as much muscularity as you can. The diaphragm, when I talked about the diaphragm before, it's a tough muscle to get to, but it needs to be exercised. That keeps your respiration strong and it keeps you breathing well and you don't have shortness of breath. I mean, a lot of this is just common sense and a certain logic that goes with it. And also, you do have to be your own advocate. You have to really push for your own well-being because you're going to be the best advocate for yourself. And then hopefully other people will step up to the plate and help.
Why do you think people with ALS die? What do they die from? And by the way, I hope you're all okay with my using the D word. But we're using it for a positive purpose. Why do you think people die from ALS? I'll give you a hint. There's 3 reasons. Anyone know?
No.
Respiratory failure, malnutrition, and
An infection.
an infection. Thank you. Short-term memory. Infection, specifically pneumonia, a leading cause of ALS death. Malnutrition, people starve to death, or some practically starve to death. He weighed 104 pounds when he died. Before he got ALS, he weighed 208 pounds.
But I have to
Nature
say,
just put that into an equation of exactly 50%. He died of malnutrition.
but I do want to interject something.
Yes.
He did not want a feeding tube. He had a predisposition against ever having a feeding tube, and he didn't want it, and he was a very strong-willed individual. But today, when we look at a feeding tube, we don't look at it as, oh, I'm going to have this means it's the end. Actually, you use a feeding tube to take medications, to take supplements, and you eat the things you enjoy. It doesn't mean that you stop eating. You can continue to eat and then maintain your weight levels. And there's new products out there. The one that we talk about on our website is the Mickey, which is very flat, so it's not a big tubes coming out of your stomach. It's flat and it's very, very positive. It's not
Looks like a belly button.
yeah, it's like
Seriously.
having a second belly button. So I think that sometimes the idea is that you have to look at the positives of what opportunities are available. It was a constant sadness for us that we could not convince him to get a feeding tube. I think if he was diagnosed today, the outcome would be very different. Today, there is a great deal more that's known. It has more attention, there's more focus on ALS, and so the outcome is considerably better.
You know how long some of our patients have lived with ALS? We've worked with them for up to 14 or 15 years. They had ALS, some of them, for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years before that. Now, these aren't freaks. I mean, these aren't the anomalies. These aren't the rare people who have the slowest moving ALS. Some of them have come back from being in far worse condition. One of our patients, a lady in New Jersey, California, Florida, her husband designs nuclear power plants. Don't hold that against him. And so they move all over the country. But she developed the disease 15 years ago. She hooked up with us before there was an ALS Worldwide. It was just Ma and Pa Kettle, or just us chickens, saying, gee, here's what we're doing with Ben. And she's been with us all these years. She just got back from a 3-week trip to Greece. 4 islands, Athens, Salonika, maybe, some other major point on the mainland, with her husband and their 2 adult sons. That trip, they just got back from 6 months earlier, they did Italy. Their name is Gattoni, so every other trip is to Italy. But in between Italy comes Greece and Spain and who knows where. But these people, people like her, they are living with ALS. It's not a study in sadness. It's not that they are bedridden and they're in bed all the time at home. They never see the light of day. For heaven's sakes, when we're in their neighborhood of New Jersey, which is not often, they made us at the 2nd Avenue Deli in New York, which has corned beef sandwiches about this big. She can eat one of them, the whole sandwich. We can only eat a half a sandwich.
But I don't want you to know, I want you to know, she is compromised. She can't
Yes.
walk. Understanding her speech is very difficult for me. Usually I have a pretty good ear for it. Her husband pretty much understands. But she uses her little flip phone. She won't switch to an iPhone. And she's able to do the things that she really wants to do. When she was diagnosed, she wanted to see her children, her boys, graduate from grammar school. Then it was, I want to see them graduate from high school. Then, now they're lawyers, right? And so they're still living a full life. Now she wants to see her grandchildren. But, in terms of her acceptance of the disease, she does her life. She has many friends. It's very full. Ron wants you to talk about the Diaphragm Pacer.
Oh, you ever heard of the Diaphragm Pacer? What my boss says, I don't carry that too far. You ever heard of the Diaphragm Pacer? Anyone? Yes? Okay. It's like a cardio pacemaker. I have a cardiac pacemaker, so I had a heart attack about 22 years ago. And so in here, right on this side, it used to be on this side, he's moving around every 7 years or so. So I have this pacemaker that causes my heart to beat when it doesn't want to at the right time by itself. Diaphragm pacemaker, same thing. It makes your diaphragm go boopa, 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 X number of times a minute, even though your diaphragm on its own would not be strong enough to do that. Now, as you all know, ALS attacks voluntary muscles, not involuntary muscles. So your heart is never diseased from ALS. Your lungs aren't, but your diaphragm is. It's a voluntary, actually it's 2 muscles, you have 2 diaphragms, or it's 2 parts. Because your diaphragm, you can control it. If you do this, I'm causing my diaphragm not to function right now. It's a voluntary muscle. So if, heaven forbid, I get ALS too, my diaphragm is going to peter out. It's not going to work indefinitely. So a diaphragm pacer works like a cardio pacemaker does for me, and it's a similar type of surgery, but it's really not terribly complex. They take a couple of really fine wires made out of platinum, and they contain electrical leads inside. And they make a little tiny incision. It's called microlaparoscopic surgery. You probably know what that is. It's a hole that's less than a 1/4 inch at its largest, 1/4 inch around. And they take this little tiny hole and they put in these platinum wires, or these platinum sheaths, and inside the sheath are a couple of electrical wires. All of this is so tiny, if you tripped on it, you wouldn't even see it on the ground. And they put those into the diaphragms at certain points where there's a big amount of protein so that it'll really work well, and it causes your diaphragm to beat every X number of seconds. Usually it's set for 12 to 18 times a minute. That's how often your diaphragm should work when it's functioning by itself. So if there's still some life in your diaphragms when you check this out, you go to, well, here you would go to Barcelona. What's the name of that center?
Goodman.
Oh, the Gutman Institute. There's a place in Barcelona called the Gutman Institute. And there's a great, great surgeon who's been trained by the inventor of the Diaphragm Pacer. And he'll do this surgery. It takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You stay in the hospital 1 to maximum 3 days, you know, if you want to be waited on. And you go home, and at night you hook up the pacer, this little device. It looks sort of like an iPhone, but it's a little clunkier. You hook up the pacer to the wall, to an electrical outlet, so it charges it up, and then you take it off of that wire and you put it in a little holster, like some people put their iPhones in a little holster. And you walk around with that, and that is keeping it charged all 24 hours a day. And about every day or day and a half you have to recharge the battery. But you have to do that with your phone. I do it every hour. So, you know, it's no big deal. The cost of it, including the pacer itself, is about $30,000 US. And sometimes we try and get the surgeon, the man who invented it, who is a very dear friend of ours, and our son was under his care when our son died, because our son wasn't strong enough to withstand a surgery for a hangnail, because he waited too long for these devices, or the FDA made us wait too long. Now it's open market. You can get it anywhere you want to get it. You don't have to have FDA approval. So the point of the story is the diaphragm pacer can be a gift from God, because your diaphragm, with ALS, your diaphragm can go almost before and more distinctly than any other of your voluntary organs. It just works that way. So you want to keep breathing, you get a diaphragm pacer. You know who he invented it for? Superman. Remember Christopher Reeve, the first movie Superman? Handsome guy, great person. Christopher Reeve was in that horse accident, the riding accident, and someone at the hospital where he was being treated knew that Dr. Anders, our dear friend, was working on this device. They gave him 3 days to get there. He perfected what he had worked on until then, got there 2 days later or 3 days later, installed it on Chris Reeve, and Chris lived for about 8 years after that. He eventually died of pneumonia, not of respiratory failure. So that's the story of the diaphragm pacing system. You can read about it again on our website. Our website knows much better, more succinctly, more accurately, all of the stuff that I've been talking about. And if you don't use Facebook, go to Facebook, because you know what it is for us? It's a community of as many as 1 million people every day who read our daily post. It's all about ALS. And you say, well, how could there be that many people who would go to a Facebook site about ALS? It's not about anything else. We don't teach anyone how to make cookies or what movies are good or anything like that, or to gossip about Donald Trump or whatever. All we talk about is ALS. There's as many as 1 million people a day who go to our Facebook page, and they communicate the comments back and forth. I tried this, it was great. I tried it, it wasn't great. And they tell you why. So it's, the Facebook site is alsworldwide.org.
Where could we put that so you can see
Oh.
what's involved.
He's so clever. That's the benefit of youth and intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, yeah.
And that's actually, if you, the person whose picture is there is Ray Anders, the inventor. Who is
That
a great
picture?
guy. No, not that picture. The picture of the person, that's
Oh.
the diaphragm pacer. You have a bigger, that's
There it
Ray.
is.
Yeah,
Could you possibly not trust a man with a smile like that?
he's a great guy.
Honest to God, if you think we're involved with and committed to ALS,
He's terrific. You know
when I
what?
call him at 6 in the morning, he's been up for 3 hours.
You know, a very strange happenstance. His sister contracted ALS and died rather recently.
5 years ago.
You know, and
He's been working with
he's
the
been
ALS
working-
community for 20 years. Sister develops ALS out of the blue, same way anyone develops it.
very, very fast. It went very
1
quickly
year.
for her. But you know, that's part of what we're talking about. Everybody has a different journey. What happens to one doesn't happen to everyone.
And kind of just to add on one quick thing, if any of you want counsel, advice, where do I get this, how do I do that, what do you think of masitinib, blah, 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 any of those things, you know how to reach us.
Actually, he just went to the Get Help page.
Oh.
You go down and see where it says online profile, submit a profile. Just fill out a profile and send it in. And then you get a response from us with an opportunity to schedule a Skype or FaceTime. And we can visit together and really talk about what your issues are at this particular moment. And I always say to people, you know, well, we're having this one conversation, but if you have questions or 2 months down the road you want to have another Skype, just go to the link and sign up. We sort of think of ourselves as being a helping hand, a support system for you so that you don't feel like everything has to be on you. You have somebody you can ask questions. And sometimes patients write or they call and they say, what do you know about this or that? And if we don't know anything about it, we'll do the research to find out.
So I have one question.
Sure.
What about what's your advice when it's about coughing and your things get stuck in your throat
Right.
and soreness in the mouth? What's the best medication for that?
Okay, one of them would be that box that we showed you. In fact, take one of the sets of tablets. There's like 3 batches of 4 tablets or 4.
The name of the...
Yeah, that's the one. Okay.
Yes, Pharmanac.
Okay.
Take one of those tablets. Anyone else who is concerned really about that, I'm sorry we only have 1 box of them with us. But you take one of these tablets, take it out of the foil, put it into a small glass, the size of this cup here, and stir it up with your finger until it's all dissolved. It'll create an effervescence, because all it is the supplement called
Acetylcysteine.
L-acetylcysteine, okay? Very common supplement, but it adds one thing to it, effervescence, okay? And the 2 things together cause all of that gunk in the throat, whether it's phlegm or saliva or anything you want to call it. It causes it to dissolve. It breaks it down so you can just spit it out. And even if you are the patient and have very little respiratory strength with which to spit, I'll tell you what you do. You get your caregiver, your daughter, your mother, your father, whomever it is, to reach in with a Kleenex and grab it and pull it out. But it causes it to come up and break apart so you can get rid of it.
The other thing that Pharmanac does is it thins it out. So it's either you get it out or it goes down. This is available. It's over the counter. the company is located in Canada. They ship everywhere in the world. And it's not terribly expensive, but it's a very effective medication for that. The other thing is that for eating, there are certain foods that are going to cause coughing. They get caught. Rice is a bad thing. Lettuce is a bad thing. So you have to become familiar with the kinds of foods that are easy to eat so that they don't get caught. And also, when people have ALS and they're eating, they have to focus on eating. They can't eat and talk and do a bunch of things all at the same time because your focus needs to be with what you're doing in that moment to avoid the coughing and avoid the choking. But there are lots of recipes on our website for good kinds of foods that you can blend so that they're easy to swallow. You get the flavor, but you don't have the difficulties of swallowing. So,
And maybe you take one of those and, one pack of them.
yeah, she
and
took
just,
it.
and
I don't know if anybody else needs a packet.
hand it around.
Why
And
don't you just pass
I
it
think
around?
there's
and
3
take
more sets of 4 in there.
a bunch of them.
So please take, and give it to others.
So one a day or?
You know,
You
you
take-
can. Go ahead.
Anywhere from 1 to 6 a day. They cost about $1 US per tablet. That box is about $20 US. And it's worth every penny of it. You take them as needed. So if you have a little phlegm caught in your throat or you just can't spit up somewhat, it's still okay, you're not choking. You take one and see if that does the job. And 3-4 hours later, you say, gee, I think I need more. You'll tell yourself what the answer is, so you take another one. Some people have taken up to 6 a day. You can theoretically take up to 12 a day, but I've never known anyone who's taken more than 6. And that person or those people will do that for 1 day, and they'll cut down to 3 a day, and then to 2 a day. And if you don't need it at all, if everything is perfect, don't take any. Next time it happens, start with 1 or 2.
But does it also help with soreness in the mouth?
It doesn't really, there's nothing about N-acetylcysteine that is a curative for what you call soreness. Now, it may your mouth will feel better from not having to cough out all of this stuff all the time. So maybe that'll make it feel better. But in terms of the soreness,
In her cheeks?
Yeah.
Sometimes,
put anything that we
well, sometimes people get thrush because you're not able to get your mouth rinsed properly. So, and thrush is something that needs a treatment from your doctor in order to clear it out. I don't know why she would be having pain in her cheeks, but is it white? Does she get a white film?
I haven't seen it. It's
Just that it's sore. Yeah.
If you feel like writing down your email and just put the word sore cheeks.
Or just send me an email.
yeah. I will.
The card is up there.
Yeah,
Send
that's
an email.
yeah.
That's the new way, isn't it?
Yes, it's the new age. There's cards up there.
Living in the past.
Emails on it.
Okay. Other questions, comments, complaints? She takes all the complaints. What else you want to ask?
I don't want you to feel like if you didn't get to every subject today, that's it, we're gone. Please take our business cards and contact us if you think of something tonight, tomorrow, whatever, and we get back to you very quickly. When Ben was diagnosed, I wanted answers the day before, and I sort of respect that for other people who are looking for answers and may have questions. So I do try to get back within a day or two.
I was thinking in a longer perspective to get the scientists in the US, where you live, and in Norway to cooperate with research. And the name you mentioned, Swenson.
Clive Spencer.
Clive
Yeah,
Spencer.
is he like the neurologist you would recommend?
He's actually not a neurologist.
Okay.
He was a veterinarian. He
Okay.
worked with animal,
But not to make dogs feel better.
no,
He
no.
worked with animals as the subject of
Research.
Of research.
You know, I have to say, I used to feel that there was no communication. Everybody was in their towers and they weren't
Yeah.
talking. I was very angry because I didn't think they were working hard enough. Why haven't you come up with something? I need to really take care of my son. They are working very hard. You know, it's like the last frontier is the brain and neurons. And they're working hard, but they just don't know enough yet. Initially, well, when Ben was alive, they thought it was one gene. So he's been gone since 2008, and now there's 30 genes that are involved, that they know are involved. I do think there's a lot happening right now. There's a lot to be encouraged about, that there is a lot of research going on, and they do communicate, they do talk to each other. Probably we'd like it to be more, but I do find that the scientists, the researchers that are working in this area, there are exceptions, but many of them are very communicative, and they're looking for help from each other. And then when they have sites, you know, they'll have something that they're going to trial. They have sites all over that they need to have cooperation between the neurologists to get the patient population involved. And we do try to do that as well. We try to communicate to patients. I know when Clive started his trial, there were 2 people that contacted me that are right in that area where he is, and I said, go to Cedars-Sinai and get into that trial because
Was that the neurone
it's effective.
trial?
Not the neurone trial, it's the one, I don't know, what is he calling it, Clive? It has a name, but I can't remember it, but yeah. So I think we have to wrap up. It's been great. Thank you for coming. I mean, it's, you know, it's not that easy to travel and get together, but I'm very glad that you all came. It's been a pleasure meeting you and visiting with you, and I hope we've been of some support and given you a little bit to hold on to.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, guys, time to break it up. We're going to go to the train station pretty soon.
Are you leaving to?
Well, from here, we're catching a 6 o'clock flight to Stockholm. And then on
Today?
Monday, tonight. And then Monday we fly home. But it's been a wonderful trip. We really love Norway. I have never been here before, and so I'm thrilled. It's a beautiful country. Had no idea. So we'll be back.
Everyone's nice.
Everybody is nice.
The
Yes.
streets are clean. What else can we ask? Yeah.